Hi, I'm James Lott Jr., the CEO of JLJ Media. We are so proud of this show, Forgotten Hollywood. They came to us a year ago in 2021. Doug Hess brought us a show filled with lots of forgotten tidbits on some of the artists that you know or may not know from the old Hollywood times. The show has been a huge success on our network. We are so very happy. The numbers are great each week, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. And you out there have actually talked to us and told us how much you love the series. Great reviews on YouTube and basically on audio on our audio sites. And folks ask us, when's the next episode? It is out usually every Monday. We've had a few special episodes, but mostly Mondays. It's out and here for you. I am so excited to announce this is our special 1-year anniversary special here for Forgotten Hollywood on JLJ Media. What's going to happen is you're going to see two separate interviews. Because of time and distance, we had to split it in half. We've brought back former co-hosts who've discussed shows with Doug Hess, talk about stuff. So please stay tuned and enjoy. And once again, happy anniversary to Forgotten Hollywood and Doug Hess. And thank you for being loyal watchers and listeners.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Forgotten Hollywood, your podcast of memories of yesteryear. My name is Doug Hess, and if you're tuning into Forgotten Hollywood for the first time, what I do on this podcast is take you back in time on a journey and share with you pieces of Hollywood that you may or may not have known about. And in this episode, we have a very special episode. We have some very special guests with us today because we are celebrating Forgotten Hollywood's 1-year anniversary, our 52nd episode that is being aired today. And so, like I said, we have some special guests that you hopefully will remember from our past episodes. We have James Lott Jr., who has been on a few episodes with us, but is also the president CEO of JLJ Media. We also have Flobo. He was on Flobo was on. He talked to us, I believe, on comedy.
Yes.
Yep. And then, of course, Don Sanders. He's been on several episodes with us. He's kind of a guest host that we'll have from time to time, but he's also talked about his, what is it, Don? You're up to 5,000 autographs of celebrities?
Yes, but the only one I'm missing is James Lott and yours.
He knows I'm not a celebrity. That's great. He's like, yeah, you, whatever. But Doug Hess is James Lott Jr.
Well, that's how it is. I will send one to you, Don. I'll send one to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, almost 5,000, really?
Yes, but it's taken 30 years.
Yeah, I know, but that's incredible.
It's like 8x10s or an autograph book, or what do you have it?
Usually 8x10s, but I have a bevy of different sorts. Yeah.
Oh wow,
so,
really cool.
Yeah.
This is to the episode, Flobo.
Yeah,
that's right.
And what's not
Forgotten Hollywood.
That's right.
Sorry, yes. Sorry.
And Don's got some neat stories that he has shared through the episodes with us about how he's got some of those autographs, and we really appreciate all of you guys being on. And really, thank you. I want to say a special thank you to the audience, our listeners that listen every single week. But I also want to thank the three of you for your input and agreeing to be a guest on the show, especially early on when we didn't know if anybody was going to be listening to what we were doing or if this was going to really take off, and it really has. And so all the success that we've had on the show is because of our listeners and also because of individuals like you willing to take a chance on a nobody and really help us out.
I also want to thank you, though. But go ahead, James. Go ahead, Flo. No, I was going to say that, I want to thank you for having this idea. A lot of times we grew up with movies, we love them, and we say, I wonder how it was. I wonder how it was. You bring it every single week about how it really was back then. So I appreciate what you're doing, man.
Well, thank you. Go ahead, James. No, go ahead. I was just going to say, I just wanted to say that, I really enjoyed it, and it keeps me on my toes, allows me to kind of do the homework and really go out and try to find guests and really connect with individuals. I've learned a lot in a lot of my research, and so it's been fun.
I want to tell you, so folks, like I said, I'm the CEO of this company, and I said, yes, I greenlit this project. And he knows, I'll tell the story because it's funny. he showed me the logo. And I was like, that's cute, but I think we're gonna change it. I was like, no, it's to this, it's to that. I named, yes, that logo there that we're not touching it anytime soon.
Right.
But in the beginning, I was like, oh no. Then I said, then I made a decision. I said, we'll keep it. We'll see what happens. And I always believe that, almost kind of like what Flo was saying partially, is that you start something, you try it out, see what happens, sticks to the wall. If it doesn't, we can always change logos. It's not a big deal. I've done that recently. On some of my shows. It's not a big deal. But I like the concept. You pitched me the concept. I liked it. Had no, I mean, I want to emphasize to go out there, no idea how quick. I was telling him the first month or so, the naturally slow. It's just getting started. Oh, no, all of a sudden, in March and April, it was like, bam. And then it's just taken off since then. And I remember Monday last year where I didn't get it out fast enough. I'm 3 hours behind him, so I try to get whatever. And this guy, because he goes, well, where's Scott in Hollywood? And I was like, who are you? Okay. And I was like, okay. And then I go, wow, that's interesting. Someone's actually asked me for the show. And then consistently behind some of my biggest shows last year, he was number 2 or 3 or 4 every week. And of my shows last year, kids, he's the number 2 show of all of my shows. I have 45 shows. He was number 2. That's first year, debut season, debut. I mean, seriously. I mean, and it's growing. And the last 3 weeks, he knows this, last 3 weeks, we've had the biggest numbers of JLJ Media history, period, as a whole. But he's had the biggest numbers ever. And it's growing. And it's happening again. The new numbers come out on Mondays. I look at all the numbers. Right. And it's going to be another record week again. I mean, I'm just completely flabbergasted at how this thing is taken off. You filled a niche that was, I guess, that really wasn't there within the bigger niche. Right. And people are really, really, and go on, was it on Apple Music? You'll see like 25 reviews. I can barely get one review on my other shows. Like 7 years.
People don't want to write reviews. People don't want to write reviews for anything. Yeah.
But his, it's just like 5-star, 5-star, 5-star. Just write reviews. I'm like, so you have hit a nerve actually that I think is very important. And your show's success is actually influencing another show on our network that's kind of similar. So it's like it's called the Doug Hess effect. And so I literally it's like. It really is, and you're getting guests. You see how Flo and I've been doing this for a while. So you see how hard it is. It's not easy. So
it's not, and we're not just concentrating here in the United States. We're going overseas and getting guests. Matter of fact, we recorded something earlier this afternoon, and our guest was from Scotland.
Wow.
So it's been really neat. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say it's all been roses in this process, because it's not. As everybody knows, it's hard to get your guests. And sometimes you challenge yourself as saying, what story am I going to talk about today? Or what is going to be today's topic? And sometimes I've texted Dawn. Dawn can
many times.
This. Yeah, and said, I'm thinking about X. What do you think? And, and like I said, I could not do this without everybody's help here because of the feedback. And James knows I'm bugging him all the time, sending an email going, hey, what about this and that? And it's really been a group effort. And so, like I said, any success that I've had is all because of everybody, just not anything I've done. So thank you guys.
Well, and James is right. You filled a niche because movies are the fabric of our lives. And so, we remember going to the movie with our first date. We remember going to the movies with our grandparents or their favorite stars, or this movie really touched us. Those are the things that make up the different segments of our lives. And so people love to reminisce. And when you allow them to do that, they go, oh, I should check that film out again, or oh, I should look at that actress or actor and see what else they've done. So,
and because of you, also Doug, because you brought on, was it Wendy Lou Lee from Little House on the Prairie? Someone came to me and said, James, I have all these Little House on the Prairie stars. Would you like to interview them? And so I've interviewed 4 so far to huge success. But that became because of you going to her first and having a successful episode of that the PR people came and people came like, James, you say, oh my God, you have these things. So I'm just telling you, it's a great thing. You feel something that's really working.
And correct me if I'm wrong, James, but I believe the Little House on the Prairie with Wendy Lou has been our biggest episode.
#1 episode.
Yeah. And so it's amazing. Yeah, and that's something that's been off, 30 years?
Yes.
Or longer off the air. And there's still that desire to learn and hear about.
Oh, trust me. I do a lot of nostalgia TV shows. I do Dallas and Dynasty and all these things. And people are tuning in. Girlfriend, they're tuning in. I mean, I'm shocked at how big these things are. But people, I think we hit a nerve at the right time.
Right.
Because the pandemic has made us all want to escape from reality. Nothing new is that great anymore. So we're going backwards.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we can binge watch now.
Yes.
That didn't used to be a thing.
Yes.
You had to wait till next week to see what the outcome was. And now you can watch all the seasons, in a week.
Yes. Well, seriously. Yeah.
Back in my day, it took 6 months for a VHS to come out. And we were grateful. That's the way it was.
Look at the youngin' over here. Back in my day. Sure, okay.
But you had to pay your late fee. You had to pay your late fee before you got the new movie.
I'll rewind it.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, and I'll tell you the other thing that I think has really been great is we've had a lot of celebrity family members that have written books that has been on The Wizard of Oz. Again, we're at, Don, I know you're a big Wizard of Oz fan. What are we, 75, 80 years from The Wizard of Oz, 1939? 80
years now.
Yeah, 80 years. And there's still a huge love for a film. Yeah, that's 80 years old, And so we've been very fortunate. We've been very blessed. I want to have a shout out to Warren Crum, who helps me with a lot of the guests, especially a lot of the celebrities' relatives and individuals that have written books. He has sent me a lot of contacts. So I want to send a special thank you to him, a shout out for all his hard work. And that's one thing I also love about this. People that you don't even know will send you suggestions and say, hey, Doug, what about X? I'd like to learn more about so-and-so, or here's an idea for a book. And so that to me has been really rewarding. And that's when you're really hitting a nerve and people enjoy it. And to me, that's what it's all about, is trying to fill a void for somebody.
Hollywood is big.
Yeah.
Hollywood's been around for, as long as I've been alive, Sting. Hollywood's been around a long time. I just look good for my age. A long time. And there are a lot of people who, we're talking millions of people have come through the Hollywood machine in various capacities. So these shows could go on forever. Literally there's shows, as long as you speak and think and get on a microphone, you can literally talk to anybody. There's a million stories out there, a million of them. And Flobo and I, and you are actually each getting pieces of Hollywood in various ways, but there's thousands of others, millions of others. So you're tapping into that. You can go on forever.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, let's kind of ask some questions here. And I kind of sent some of you, who's the forgotten star that you would recommend, or you think doesn't get the love or the attention that they deserve? We all know about the Jimmy Stewarts of the world and the Cary Grants and the Katharine Hepburns, etc. But who's somebody you think is overlooked and doesn't get the love and attention that they deserve?
Because I'm different.
No, really.
You say yourself, so help me.
No, you're all forgot me.
I need more credit, y'all.
Exactly. All Rosie to James Lott Jr. No, so no, I'm different. So I want to name actually 2 films.
Okay.
I'll talk fast. I'll be really quick about that.
No, go ahead.
There are 2 films I think that are, because I always say this: people, actors, films are usually passed down by generation a lot of times. So a lot of movies like Wizard of Oz, we all know it.
Right.
But for every Wizard of Oz, there's another movie from 1939 that never gets passed down. So Oz, or whatever year, it's 1939, right?
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't get, I'm not good at math. Doesn't get passed down. So I want to name 2.
Okay.
These movies both, I love these movies. And actually, I would love to redo them if I had a chance. One is called, I have the DVD in front of me. It's from the 1971. It's a comedy called Who is Harry Kellerman and Why is he saying these terrible things about me? Starring Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman's done a million films, but he never mentioned this one. It was nominated for an Oscar for the supporting actress. She didn't win that year. Homegirl from Cloris Leachman won for a Last Picture Show, which of course that was a huge movie that year. So they all won on that one. She didn't win. Barbara Harris was up for Best Supporting Actress. It was a comedy, takes place in one day in New York City. This guy named George Holloway is a rock music producing writer who's never been in love. He's had bad relationships, but he's never really truly been in love. So he can't write these love songs anymore. But he's also contemplating suicide.
Oh,
so he's with a psychiatrist played by Jack Warden, of all people. I was like, okay. And the whole day is him discovering himself, and he meets Barbara Harris, who's also a failed Broadway musical actress. And she actually starts to kind of fall for her. Like, it's kind of this whole thing of where it's like his last chance, last hurrah. The ending is very controversial today because he flies his plane into a building in Manhattan. And so we can't do that anymore now, clearly.
Right.
But the whole thing about him, and at the very end, it's very cheeky. It's him skiing with a psychiatrist in heaven. So it's just a weird thing. But the whole film is really about creativity versus life. Or I say real life, REEL, versus real life, REAL. Kind of thing. And I think Dustin Hoffman's performance, yes, we know about The Graduate before that, and yes, we know about other stuff later after that. But I feel like this is a forgotten film. So it's called Who is Harry Kellerman and Why Did He Say Those Terrible Things About Me? And at the very end, towards the end, he reveals himself to be Harry Kellerman, possibly. Watch the movie. So that's something I want to mention.
Do you have it on DVD or Blu-ray? I couldn't tell.
Just regular DVD. Yeah.
Okay,
DVD.
Yeah, sure.
And the second film, yes. And
I said interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and the second film I want to talk about is I Never Sang for My Father, which came out in 1970. Melvin Douglas and Gene Hackman. Again, Gene Hackman, we know him from French Connection a year later and all these other things. Melvin Douglas, we know from things too. They got 3 Oscar nominations, and for Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor for both of them. It was a play they made into a movie. My father and I have a horrible relationship. We don't have one anymore now. We fought for years. So any father-son estrangement stories I'm drawn to. And the mother dies, and Gene Hackman comes. Gene Hackman's my age, so he's middle-aged, they call it back then. He's middle-aged. Going across country, back to California to be with his bitter father, who is actually becoming senile also. And it's this real exploration, and it has like a feel of a play. It's a real exploration of this father-son dynamic. And what's crazy is there's no happy ending. You would think, usually in Hollywood, they wrap everything up.
Right.
Back then, this golden age, it didn't have a happy ending. And I thought that's more realistic. That to me was something that's realistic to me and heartbreaking. Melvin Douglas so the movie was up also that year for Best Picture, but of course Patton won that year. And it was up against Airport, which led to all the disaster films. 5 Easy Pieces, which of course was the hippie thing. Love Story, which of course was the total emotional favorite. And MASH, which led to a series that lasted 11 years.
Damn.
And Melvin Douglas, who I thought was amazing in his film, which I thought he did not get passed down. He lost to James Earl Jones, The Great White Hope, of course. Jack Nicholson in 5 Easy Pieces. Ryan O'Neal in Love Story. And of course, he denied his Oscar and sent Shashi Littlefeather to come up there for Patton, George C. Scott. So it's a tough film that came out in a year of lots of great stuff that came out in 1970. I was a year old when it came out, but when I saw it as a teenager. It's a film that I wish I had on DVD. I don't have it on DVD or VHS, but I think people should check it out. So I think those are 2. So I Never Sang for My Father. That's another one that's forgot.
Very interesting. Football, how about you?
Are we talking about movies or talking about just like actor?
Well, since James kind of twisted it and went, how about let's go with movies?
Okay, great. So just my background as far as the film side of things, I graduated from Chapman University with a Master's of Fine Art in film production with emphasis in editing. And my first year, we had to do a lot of those movies, this those classic films. And my teacher, the dearly departed Tom Mankiewicz, who was the nephew of Herman Mankiewicz, who wrote Citizen Kane, who also wrote Superman 78 with Dick Donner. Just a wealth of knowledge. And my personal favorite of his, Mother Jugs and Speed, which is a 70s movie. But
yes.
That's a whole other thing. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Howard Cartel, yeah. Woo.
Yep.
But the one movie I remember sitting, because that film analysis class was Tuesday mornings at 7:30 a.m. But the one that I was on the edge of my seat because of how cool it was and how it basically shaped modern films was the 1950 version of King Solomon's Mines. Just being on this adventure, just seeing the scope of things, the adventure aspect of it, seeing different cultures and trying to get the MacGuffin or whatever that was. I said, okay, I see where Indiana Jones came from, which begat Jurassic Park, which begat Men in Black, which begat Independence Day. So to see like the ancestor at that time, and I was like in my mid-20s going like, oh my gosh, for me, being a kid from Brooklyn, not seeing many movies, going to film school by privilege or by luck or whatever, I finally saw where like these modern films came from. That kind of changed my life in that way. So a lot of people don't remember that version because I know there was a one that came after that in the 80s, which isn't nearly as good. Yes. I'm not here to throw shade, y'all. But the 1950s version for me, it was like, okay, I see where there's an evolution of this art form for sure.
Oh, excellent. How about you, Don?
Well, first and foremost, I didn't realize that Flobo was that Flobo. So Flobo, bud, you go and send me your autograph and I will add it on.
I'm getting autograph, y'all.
That Flobo. That's right. You know that Flobo.
That's right. That makes all the difference.
5,003 and counting.
That's right.
I love it. I love it.
One of the best movies I have seen in a long time, and I really like the whole genre, and I like all the different versions of it, is A Christmas Carol. But the one that I liked the most was 1951. It was Aleister Sims. And he was a phenomenal Scottish actor who played a lot of different character roles and stuff. But he understood that it was all about the face and all about the expressions, the eyes, the mouth, the tilt of the head, all of those type of things. And he brought an empathy to the character of Ebenezer Scrooge that you just don't see in a lot of the other versions of that movie. And he definitely is an underrated actor to kind of steer it back in that direction. So,
No, I want to tell you, Doug, I did think about an actress that I was going to mention also. I don't follow the rules. I do whatever I want.
You're the boss. You're the boss. You don't have to follow the rules.
I'm trying to follow your rules. You know
right, exactly. I just want to say I did think of an actress that I think that doesn't get enough, and she has MS, and she's not really recognized. Terry Garr. Terry Garr was a wonderful actress in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, who was a big star for a minute there too. I have her book, which I haven't. Somebody goes to try to find her, but I have it here somewhere, where she talks about getting MS and actually ending her career. But she was a great actress who just no one talked. I mean, comedian, no one talks about. Yep. Just no one. She didn't get passed down either to anybody.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I think she was in Mr. Mom.
Yes.
Now I'm going blank, but yeah, she was in several of those. Just wonderful films. Yes. No, I agree with you on that.
But she doesn't get enough. I mean, they don't talk about her enough. I'm like, I just don't even. Okay, so I'm looking up right now. Okay, I want to look up just so we can have this.
In Tootsie, she was in Tootsie as well.
She loved Tootsie.
Yeah. Oh wow! Yeah.
Oh,
she was in Young Frankenstein, Mr. Mom, Tootsie,
different times. Yeah.
Close Encounters, Dumb and Dumber. Close Encounters is my favorite movies of all time. Don't even start on that.
Yeah,
that's one other story. It's on the beam. That whole scene with the spaceship, the music, it just makes me weep every time. I'm just like, it's so good. It's so good. But she was in a lot of stuff. Tootsie was favorite movie too.
Yeah. Dustin Hoffman, Bill Murray's in that.
Just Lang. They're all
just great. Now, for me, I would say the two. I do have two films as well that I think is underrated. One is the Amazing Ambersons, which was Orson Welles' second movie that he made after Citizen Kane. Now, to me personally, I understand why Citizen Kane's the #1 movie of all time. And
you
stuff,
do? Because I don't.
Yeah.
That bird comes out of nowhere. Let's be real.
That's so funny.
But I would say, personally, I think the Amazing Amberson is probably better than Citizen Kane, in my view. I just think it's a wonderful movie. It's a great book. that was written. It was set in Indiana. Just get a little plug out there. The second one that I think is an underrated film is Young Mr. Lincoln with Henry Fonda from 1939. Now, 1939, we were talking about the 1970s, James. 1939, you have a ton of classical.
Many movies, yes.
And Henry Fonda, in my personal opinion, probably could have been nominated for an Academy Award 1939, except he was up against, Gone with the Wind, Stagecoach.
It was too
the list. Yeah, and talk about terrible luck to come out in a year with the studs, the gold standards, of that. So for me personally, those are probably two films that I think are underrated and well worth watching in terms of that.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to look at here. So that year there was a lot of stuff that year actually.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is another one with Jimmy Stewart. So I mean, you just had the just the studs. I mean, it's hard to compete with something like that. And I don't know if Hollywood's ever seen a year since 1939 that's maybe has been as competitive as that particular year.
They actually say 1968.
1968.
I read a book on it. I have a book on it. That was in the heat of the night. Guess who's coming to dinner? There's a bunch of
wow,
There's a it was like Dr. Dolittle. Like it was this weird thing was like 4 main films of Dr. Dolittle. They're like, where did that come from? But it was like this whole thing. But I saw it as a kid, of course. But it was like, that was like, I feel like that was another year they were saying was a tight race year with all the acting nominations and
and so I don't know. That's why we celebrate this and look at this. And like you said, it's also interesting when you see some of the comments that are out there from individuals when people say, "Oh, I remember my parents watching this with, or my grandparents," and that nostalgia, I think, is also really important. It's out there. The other thing is, if we don't continue to talk about some of these stars, they're going to be gone, and that next generation is not going to understand some of the trials and tribulations that they went through to get us to where we are today in cinema.
When I talk about to people like the Busby Berkeley films, I mean, I was just a huge fan.
Oh wow!
Production and everything. I love those. Or the Thin Man series. I mentioned that. I mean, people just don't. I'm like, they don't understand. I'm like, you don't even understand. Like William Powell and them, they were the bomb. They were the bomb. Every they were drinking their martini. They were working it out, and the dog. I mean, it was wonderful. Like they don't. I grew up. I'm the last generation that literally collectively grew up there because we only had 3 channels until cable came. But we had 3 channels at first, and I was going to ask you guys. I mean, I always wonder why, like a lot of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, there were some really good films, and like there are films that again they get passed down like them. I remember seeing it as a kid, being scared of the ants. I was being giant ants. I was scared. The original, but the Invasion of Body Snatchers, creepy. The original Attack of the. There's a lot of things that came out in those years that people they don't know it. They either know the remake, The Thing, the original The Thing was good. The one in the 70s, of course, was really good. John Carpenter's thing was really good too. But the one in the 50s was good too. Like I think no one talks about it, and so we have to kind of continue to, because now all of us are going to film school and learning this stuff in there. We're just kind of going, I'm going to watch The Real Housewives of Atlanta. That's it.
I'll be the first one to admit that if it wasn't for film school, that I wouldn't have gotten access to a lot of the good stuff. Because, I mean, granted, yes, it is pretty pretentious. Oh, I went to film school. Like, they have the first year, they have an obligation to be like, here, you filmmaker, learn this first before you try breaking the rules.
That's right.
Well,
James.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Douglas.
No, I was just going to say you were talking about some of those films, like the original Dracula.
Yes.
I mean that's a great one. The Invisible Man with Claude Rains.
Yes.
That's a wonderful film.
Harvey. I love Harvey.
Oh, yeah.
It's the bomb. No one knows that movie. They don't know that movie. I love that movie.
Yeah, or I mean, and that's why we have to see them. And it's just amazing how if I don't sit down and show my kids, and my wife is not a huge doesn't like doesn't like to watch a lot of TV. Let me put it this way. And so I remember The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. We sit down and watch it, and I ended up falling asleep in the chair because I had seen it like a 1,000 times, you know. And she woke me up at the end, and she was asking all these questions. She's like, "That was a great movie." And I'm like, that's why I watch this stuff, because there are some great movies that you don't have to have the language. You don't have to have the violence out there. It's implied. And James, I know we talked about this one time with the movie Psycho. You know, even though you don't see him in the shower scene stabbing her to death, it's implied. And the audience back then was scared, and you don't have to show the blood and the guts and the gore to get your point across.
They did show blood, but
that's true.
It was actually Hershey's chocolate syrup. It wasn't actually blood.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was, James, it was interesting that you brought up the Thin Man, because I think Myrna Loy is a hugely underrated actress.
I agree.
She was in a ton of films, especially with William Powell. She had wonderful comedic timing, but she also could do drama. And I don't know, it was just like Hollywood just kind of ignored her after her heyday. She was never given an Oscar, you know. And when you see those type of people, you just kind of shake your head, because then you see some of the people today that get Oscars, and you're like, oh, they didn't even deserve to be there, let alone get an Oscar.
So it's kind of an unfair thing. But I know, Doug, you mentioned in one of your favorite Orson Welles movies. This is not necessarily Orson Welles, even though he's in it. But I remember watching A Man for All Seasons on my own, being like, this movie is pretty cool. But it was a very late period Orson Welles. But I think when we think about the classic Hollywood era and what happens now is that it's not reverse engineered. It isn't like, hey, we have a demographic, let's make entertainment for them. It's let's have a story and let's see who gravitates toward that. Because how did you pitch A Man for All Seasons nowadays? Well, you know, it's a religious film taking place in England, you know, but like back then it was like, here we have these actors in studio contract, let's make this cool story happen. And I remember showing my mom, and I was like, she was like almost impressed that I was going to a movie that was before where she was a teenager and loving that, you know.
Well, and then you also have these actors and actresses that are non-conventional. They were known in society for other things, like Burl Ives and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. I mean, he put in a solid performance. And he was up against some major bigwigs in Hollywood. Oprah Winfrey in Color Purple. I mean,
Purple. Yep.
I was just blown away by her performance. And you know, those type of people, they just don't get a lot of the love that they need as well. Ashley Judd, I know I'm skipping generations, but Ashley Judd in Double Jeopardy. I mean, she was phenomenal in that film. And society and Hollywood, you know, you have your levels of stardom, and it seems if you don't arrive at the pinnacle, then a lot of times you're just kind of forgotten.
Well, also that, you know, there's a lot of politics, right? There's a lot of politics, and
sure,
you know, and people, I always say they let through certain folks. They obviously deem this person, because I look at, and this is no shade to either, they're both great actors. You have John Voight. Let's go to that generation. I mean, Coming Home, amazing performance. I'm not going to take away from it. Him and Jane Fonda did some of their best work, but so did Bruce Dern. Bruce Dern had the actually craziest storyline in it, and his ending in that film, if you ever watch it, folks, it's crazy. It's amazing. Yeah, he's kind of mentioned this in Hollywood, but Laura Dern, of course, is actually the bigger one, or Diane Ladd is actually, they're like the bigger ones. But they don't mention him as much. John Voight, of course, is mentioned. Angelina Jolie is his daughter, who looks like him, obviously. She's obviously a big deal. Like they let certain ones through, and I think it's political. Like, yeah, the daughter of so and so, and she happens to be talented also. Thank God. There's some families, but in some of them, like you did the Barrymore family, it took all the way to Drew to come out before there's another Barrymore was a hit. But because Drew was a Barrymore, though, I think they were ready. You know, she was like 3 years old. They were ready to like, ooh, this is Hollywood royalty of some sorts. Let's like nurture her, and clearly she's a star. But like, you know what I mean? It's like, so to Donald's point, I think some of these they don't like. Myrna Loy is my favorites, and she held her own against William Powell and all. I mean, she held her own. And she doesn't he gets more attention than she does.
And just for those listening, go back to episode 32. We do have an episode on Myrna Lloyd. So a shameless plug out there.
Yes. He did it. He did
plugs are shameless.
I don't know
always marketing, always trying to promote.
Good. And I can stick to that. Thank you. Yeah. Everybody knows me. I will promote in a second. No shame. No shame. Oh, that's good. Yes.
Go ahead, Donna. It looks like you're going to say something.
Yeah, one of my favorite actresses, singers, and all-around entertainers was Lena Horne, and she was a trailblazer for her time, and what a beauty she was. But they almost didn't let her into films, of course, because she was a lady of color. But she was persistent, and she was so talented. Eventually, they couldn't help but to let her in, and her career spanned 7 decades, 70 years, people.
Her and Eartha Kitt, another one. I mean, people think at first they think, of course, Batman, and she was one of the cats.
Right.
But she was way more than that, folks. I mean, she was way more than that. And they had to fight, to your point, Doug. Exactly. They were talented, beautiful women. I mean, I was just watching the whole thing on Rita Moreno. Same difference. Right. So I was the same thing. Yeah. She was Latina. She was Puerto Rican. They were like, they darkened her skin in movies, and but they actually are all there. They could act like they all can act. Like I salute them for sticking, like you said, sticking with it and not just saying screw Hollywood, I'm done. But it must have been tough for them.
Well, and I'll tell you, somebody else is a male actor, Tyrone Power.
Yes.
He was another one that I think was underrated in the fact that yes, he had a beauty and he had appeal from the women, but he had some acting chops there too. Let's don't kid ourselves. And unfortunately, I don't think the studio saw that. They only saw his beauty through him. And I think there was a quote that I read once that said, he said, "You put me in some tights and give me a sword," and that's what a lot of the Hollywood thought of him at the studios, because back then, and I don't think that's really changed too much today, but it was all about making the money. How quickly can we get a movie out and make money off of it. Another person I think got bit by the political bug from the blacklist was Edward G. Robinson. I think was a wonderful, wonderful actor. And, his career almost went in the toilet because of, the communism. And they thought that he was a communist and stuff like that. So that's another aspect of Hollywood that a lot of people don't like to talk about.
Yeah, and I want to mention Burgess Meredith. His scene, his episode, it makes me weep every time I see it. From the original Twilight Zone series, not the one from the 90s. I was tired. The original series.
I wasn't tired.
It was tired. I watched them.
My!
The original series.
He was tired watching it.
You think? I was tired watching it. But his episode, I wear glasses. My glasses are right here. I can't really see without them. And he gets all the books lined up, and they're all ready for everybody for rest. He's by himself for the rest of his life. He has all his books, and he breaks his glasses, and he says, "Why me?" And I cry every time I see that. I can picture that's my life because I can't see without my glasses. I mean, that is just so screwed. But his performance is not talked about enough. And then he went on to Rocky years later, obviously, using all those films. I mean, he went on to a lot of different things, and he just didn't. No one talks about him.
Yeah. And that's why we have this podcast.
Exactly.
About forgotten Hollywood.
We haven't forgotten them.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, it is interesting though. Like,
go ahead.
What's considered like forgotten and what's not. You know what I mean? Like, when I was walking the halls of my first class, there was like the wall of like famous actresses, you know what I mean, like Billy Duff and people like that. But I remember seeing a picture. I guarantee it was like the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. It was like Nina Ray McKinney, right? And in her time, she was incredibly famous, one of the first Black actresses to be featured in British programming, and she had her own following. And unfortunately, a heart attack entered her life fairly early. But it is interesting to see, like, kids my age or people my age, people younger than me don't know who she is. And it's like, man, we don't really know who's forgotten. And I think it's one of those situations where we go, oh, everyone should know who this person is. But if we don't say it or we don't talk about the projects they're a part of, they can really fade to the ether.
It's your job, Doug. Dig it up.
Yeah, Doug.
Come on.
Like cold case.
No pressure.
Like cold
no
case.
pressure.
I give you homework on your anniversary show.
Yes.
I'm trying, and that's the other thing is, if the audience has suggestions, please send them. Absolutely send it our way. Make sure you get it out there. We're on Twitter, Instagram, or our Facebook page. Make sure that you let us know, because this is a show not only that's fun for us to do, but it's also for you, the audience, as well. And if there's somebody you want to talk about, and it doesn't even have to be an actor or an actress. I mean, we've talked about John Ford, who was a director on here. We'll even talk about studios, because the history of the studios, because I think a lot of people kind of forget about RKO Studios. They were a powerhouse. Yes. They were the ones that made Frank Capra kind of famous. And now that studio is no longer there, and it got absorbed by other studios. So we're willing to talk a little bit about anything and everything on this show that has to do with forgotten Hollywood. So that's something to keep in mind for the audiences. Let us hear it. If there's somebody you want to talk about, we're open to that by all means.
Yes. Tell them.
That's right. Well, Flobo, you had a very good point. I work with some younger people. I'm almost 50. They're in their late 20s and early 30s. And I brought in my autograph collection, part of it, to show a coworker who's about my age. And he was like, oh, this is awesome. Oh, this person's great. Oh, and one person I said I really had wished I had gotten was Mr. Rogers.
Oh,
this 30-year-old and this 20-something did not know who Mr. Rogers was.
How sad.
I said, how is that possible?
The man who saved PBS? Are you kidding
me?
Yes.
I'm thinking he got passed down, right? I thought he got passed down.
I thought
you
so
would have
too.
thought.
Yeah.
You would have thought. Yeah.
I mean, I know like Captain Kangaroo didn't, but I thought he did. Like he got passed down.
I mean, I'm in my mid 30s, so I remember Mr. Rogers, but yeah, if you came after me, like to be fair, I grew up in the 90s. So like I came after the original and before the revival of the Electric Company. So I never Hey You Guys Company was the Goonies. It didn't really occur to me it was Electric Company. So like I get that, but Mr. Rogers is an icon.
Now here's the deal. I'm realizing I'm the oldest person in this group. How's that always happen? I'll be 53 in a few months. How am I the oldest?
Well, stop being timeless, all right? Then.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Oh, shoot. Well, guys, I want to thank everybody for coming on and having this celebration with us and sharing a little bit regarding our 1-year anniversary. And I just can't express enough how grateful I am for the three of you to help me in every aspect, for James taking a chance on me, because I remember going back and forth with those emails, and I vividly remember that call with James going, I don't know about the logo, and I don't even know if anybody wants to listen about Forgotten Hollywood. The list goes on and on. But he said, you know what the heck? Let's take a chance, and we can cancel you in 6 weeks when this is a huge flop.
Wow.
I'm real. I'm like, so
hey,
it happens.
Yeah, and so thank you publicly for taking a chance on me, Flobo. Thank you for being on the show and bouncing some ideas off. Same with you, Dawn. Thank you for bringing your 5003, soon to be 5003.
Well, yeah, you guys have to send it to me.
Absolutely, yeah.
Actually, we got headshots. Me and Flo just did some headshots. Maybe we'll send your headshot.
Yeah.
You were one of. A matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think Dawn, you were on episode 5, because if you're new to Forgotten Hollywood, the first Monday of every month is the Turner Classic Movie Star of the Month. So my homework's already done for me, in terms of that. The second Monday, we do a theme. The third, we do a book review. The fourth is kind of my pick of what is a forgotten star, somebody that we like. And then every once in a while, we get this weird fifth Monday in the month that we have to talk about. And I remember picking up the phone, talking to Don, and saying, I had it done. He goes, hey, remember my autograph collection? I go, oh, absolutely. So we brought him on, and we talked about that. And so we just really had fun, and Don's been on several times. And again, I can't thank you guys enough for helping out. And like I said, any success that we've had is because of you guys helping us take us.
Wow. Congratulations.
Congratulations,
Douglas.
Well, we have today with us JJ and Dave King, and some of you will remember them from previous episodes, Orlando Martin, also Margaret Rutherford, and we wanted to bring them back for this 1-year anniversary show. And we have some questions for them that we would like to have them with our discussion for this 1-year anniversary. So both of you are in media and entertainment. What was your passion, or what was something that really kind of drew you into this arena?
JJ, do you want to hit that first, or?
Oh.
There's our first edit.
I love it. It happens. It happens. It happens on TV. It happens everywhere.
Yeah. JJ, can you hear us?
Sorry, the sound went for some reason.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry. Go first.
Let's start again, or we're fine? Okay.
We got you. So good.
Okay. Sorry, I missed the first bit. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. The question is, both of you are in the entertainment world business. What was something that drew you into that? Why are you in this business?
Has Dave answered? I'll let Dave go first. And then...
Okay, I can do that. Actually, I have quite a bizarre story with this, and it may sound a little crazy, but I assure you it's absolutely true. I have a memory from when I was a baby of watching the classic 1933 King Kong, the Willis H. O'Brien stop motion film. I have a memory of watching that through the bars of my crib. And it's a very bleary black and white. The memory is black and white. And for years, I've insisted that this was true, that I watched King Kong through the bars of my crib. And about a year ago, I was talking to a friend of mine who is a TV researcher in the UK. And when I told her this story, she said, let's find out if that's true or not. And so she went through the records of when King Kong had appeared on British TV, when it had been transmitted on British TV. And she found a screening which correlated to me being just over 1 year old on TV. And it was shown in the London area, which is where I grew up. And she even sent me a clipping from the TV guide from that week, the radio, I think it was the Radio Times. And there was the screening exactly as it turned out, right? Because the house I remember it being in, we moved away from when I was about 18 months old. And so there it is. And that really is the thing that did it for me. It was King Kong. And I remember reacting to this film on a hugely primal basis of course, not understanding at all what I was watching, but the roars of the monsters from the TV screen and probably Fay Wray's, damsel in distress screams. And these things really kind of hit home to me. And within a couple of years, I was, we're talking about the kind of mid to late 1960s. And I began to read monster magazines like Forrie J. Ackerman's Famous Monsters of Filmland, and magazines like this, which were always around my house because I had an older brother who was into the same stuff. And so my early reading material was Famous Monsters and Marvel Comics and DC Comics, and they just pulled me in. I was, in fact, a monster kid of the 1960s. I had the Aurora. I had all of the Aurora model kits. I collected them all throughout the years. Frankenstein, Dracula, King Kong, Godzilla. And so the bug just bit me. And these sort of fantastic movies pulled me in and really made me want to be a creative person. And I had natural drawing skills. And so all of these things began to feed through my artwork. To cut a long story short, then I went to the opening night of Star Wars in London on December the 27th. I still have my ticket in 1977. And I remember sitting watching the film, and at the opening moment, when that huge spaceship comes trundling overhead, and we, to put it in context, we'd never seen anything like that on the screen before. And I do remember it was like an alcoholic's moment of clarity, because I just sat there watching this film and I just went, this is what I want to do. I want to do things with the fantastic movies that I love and the fantastic stories that I love. And I want to somehow entertain other people and affect other people in the way that these films had affected me. So, sorry, that's quite a long answer to your question, but it was quite an arc through my childhood, these things. And so I'm a complete geek, for sci-fi and fantasy and monsters and Marvel comics. And now in my own small way, that's what I do for a living,
Well, I want to say something. I'm going to say something after this, because it makes sense to me. Sometimes our earliest memories do inform what we do, what we like. And I just, on a side note for me, when I was 3 years old, my mother said I knew the soundtrack to Jesus Christ Superstar. I knew Carol King's Tapestry album, and I knew Donovan's Sunshine Sugar Man album. Like, I knew those albums by heart because she played them all the time. No, I know. My parents were hippies and stuff. So, but I was born in the late 60s. So everybody were hippies. And they played these albums, and like Peter, Paul, and Mary, and they played all these albums. And as she said, when you were a baby, and those are my earliest memories, are hearing those up, not walking, not playing outside, not my brothers and sisters. My earliest memories are those records. And then I later became a record collector when I was like 8 years old, and then now I do music. So it's kind of like, so I'm just saying your story is interesting because
I think these things do affect us, James. I mean, JJ and in fact Doug knows as well that I'm a huge vinyl collector, and I got the bug from my parents who used to buy vinyl records, and I grew up surrounded by music. I mean, my mum and dad were into all kinds of chart music, and they would buy chart singles, and soul and R&B and two-tone and ska and reggae were all around me growing up in London. And this stuff, it's still now, music is always a very big part of the projects that I do now, as well as a personal passion, which the room full of vinyl records next door will attest to. but you're right, James. These things, these early influences, I think even sometimes we don't realize what's happening, but we soak them up like sponges.
Well, what's funny is there's things that I know. I'm like, I don't remember why I know that, and I know why. I know it's, I know at some point, like I'm a big Anglophile. Speaking of Britain, I'm a big Anglophile. So I grew up with the Tomorrow People, the original series. I grew up with I'm a Whovian. I love Doctor Who. So I grew up with Tom Baker, that iteration. So I mean, but I don't even remember when I knew that. I just. We had I Claudius, we had all these things. PBS was a huge thing in LA.
Yes.
In LA. Yeah. So my parents watched all that. I don't know why I know it. I know at some point when I recognized I know it, but they're part of my earliest memories, and that's why I think led me towards, Are You Being Served and Faulty Towers and all that. Yeah. It led me to when I was cognizant and old enough to know I'm gonna search out EastEnders and all that. I started.
Don't search out EastEnders, James.
Oh my God, I was a huge EastEnders fan in the '90s. And there was a guy named Sam. He said looked like me. I kept getting these people from England going, there's a guy named Sam who looks just like you on EastEnders. I'm like, EastEnders, what's that? And I went to channel 55 at 3 a.m. on Tuesday. And they were showing EastEnders. And I was like, Tiffany and Ricky and I got to the whole Frank and I got to everybody, Phil Mitchell. I got to the whole. I was in. I was like, but anyway,
fantastic.
But the earliest memories. Earliest memories. But go ahead. So go ahead.
Yeah, JJ.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You talking about how parents and childhood affects everything, because mine was totally different. My father's background, he had been in property and worked with the Nigerian government and did a little bit of diplomatic work as well, and spoke all these languages. Daddy spoke Spanish, Arabic, all the Nigerian languages. He was very internationally minded. So I was always wanting to be a diplomat. I wanted to work for the UN. That was my interest. I had no basic sort of urge to work in entertainment per se. But what happened? I fell into entertainment by mistake because my sister had gone to Howard University in the States.
Oh, wow.
Yes. That's my older sister. And I had been in boarding school in England. We all had been in boarding school in England. And America was like the dream. Well, I didn't know where to go in America. I wanted to go to university in America. I thought, no, after I came to the UK when I was 7. And went to prep school, then went to boarding school till the age of 18. So I was really in the system, and it was all girls, no boys. So when it was university, it was like, yes. And Daddy said, oh, well, if you want to do diplomatic work, you should go to Washington, D.C., and you should join your sister at Howard. And we went to visit her at Howard University. And when we went, it was winter, it was cold, it was horrible. And I thought, excuse me, I've just come from England where I'm playing lacrosse and hockey in the cold, and the last thing I want is to go to Washington in this cold weather. Forget it. And we had just been on holiday to Disneyland in Los Angeles. I thought, that looks nice. I'll go there. So I literally only applied. You couldn't do that today. I literally did my SATs, applied for only 2 colleges, which were USC and Pepperdine. I got into both. Yes. And then because I had seen Animal House, that film changed my life. I thought, I want to go to college with a fraternity. And it was USC, because Pepperdine was a bit sedate. It was in Malibu. It was a bit quiet. I thought, forget that nonsense. And I went to USC and I saw guys in the football gear. I thought, this is where there we go. And that's how I ended up going to USC, doing communications and journalism, and my internship at the end of my 2 last semesters, we were asked to choose, work out where we wanted to do our internship. And there was a company called Levine Communications, a wonderful man called Michael Levine, who was at the time in the 90s, this was like 92, 93. He was on PR for Charlton Heston at the time, hadn't passed away, and Michael Jackson. And that was it. I had Michael Jackson, Charlton Heston, and David Bowie. Wow. And that was it. And they said, you're going to be an assistant to his assistant. I was like, I don't care. And because of Michael Levine, I still talk to him today. He's still alive. He's about 70. He won't like me to say that, actually. He doesn't like me to say that. But anyway.
Yeah, that doesn't sound so old to me.
I know, he doesn't like, the wonderful Michael Levine got me my first job in the UK because he said, when you get back to London, you should go and work in our London office and with a guy called Alan Edwards, who looks after David Bowie in London. And that's it. That's how it started. So I kind of fell into it only because I ended up in LA and I wasn't going to be a diplomat in LA. It wasn't going to happen.
JJ, I want to ask you a question because I live near USC. I actually live near there.
Oh, really? Oh, my God.
I live in Inglewood, so I live near there.
Okay. Oh, yeah, Inglewood. Yeah.
So you went from jolly old England.
Yes.
And moved to the hood, basically.
Yes. Well, no, I lived in Westwood. I lived in Westwood Village.
Okay.
You won't believe that. Okay. Yeah, I lived in Westwood Village, and it was so crazy because I had the mindset at first. I couldn't drive. So I thought we didn't know. We didn't know at the time. It was like, oh yeah, we'll take the bus from Westwood all the way downtown. It was, and I did that for like half a semester, and my mother came over. Bless her heart. My mother came over. This was like 1989. My mother came over and got me a little car called a Rabbit. It's like a Golf.
Yes.
Rabbit.
Yes.
And it was yellow. I always remember she got me a yellow Rabbit. She said, "You've got to drive because you can't be going."
Nicely inconspicuous.
Yellow Rabbit.
I love it.
And I used to take a cab from Westwood Village all the way to USC. And Mommy said it's too expensive. You need to get a car. So I had to do driving classes, and but it took like half a semester before I got my act, because I didn't realize that you can't take a bus. It's not like London. In London, you can take a bus everywhere.
Right.
It was so scary. I'd get on the bus and I'd be like, "Oh my goodness!" There you go. So
it's still scary, girl.
Yeah. But yeah, I loved it. I mean, I have friends up till today who are in the business, casting agents. Some of them are talent. One or two have gone into business. But it's been a brilliant foundation. I'm still in touch. I'm part of the USC alumni in London, so I've held on to it for years. I'm so proud of my legacy there.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's interesting, JJ. You say that you didn't go into diplomacy, but actually in PR and communication.
Yes. You're right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yes, I did. You're right. No, you're right, because I went in a different. I know, because I don't use my languages as much as I would love to have done. But you are right. There's a lot of travel. There's a lot of dealing with people, negotiating things all the time. I've worked for some, God rest his soul. The best client I ever had was George Michael. And I was there during the toughest of the years, during the really, really sad, Dave knows the story. And it's been, it's just been an honor to work for someone like that, because it really honed me in. And we're talking about 2008, between 2008 and 2013, those integral years. Also when he went to jail, I can honestly say, it's been the journey, and it is.
Yeah. What year did he pass, JJ?
2016.
2016. All right.
Remember, he didn't do much the last 3 years. He didn't really do the last 3 years.
It was funny because him and Prince died the same year.
Yes, the same year. And Bowie. And David Bowie.
And Bowie. Yes.
I saw George Michael in Wham! Back in Wham! America here at Hollywood Park, and Shaka Khan opened for him. Shaka Khan. I was a teenager, and then I saw him for his 25th anniversary tour. He did.
Yes.
I saw him in San Jose, and he was wonderful. But he did this one thing. I'm sorry, Doug. This is one of those things.
No, go ahead.
It's one thing. So, halfway through the show, he goes, "Everybody, I'm old. I need a break. It's gonna be a clock starting for 20 minutes." And a clock comes up, and he starts counting up from 20. He goes off. And then when he goes 5, 4, 3, that's love. Because I was like, I understand it, George. I understand it. I get it. That's why.
I was going to say, I might adopt that for my life.
Me too.
Everybody, I need a break. Back in 5.
Get a break. Get a clock. Get a clock. They count it down. But George Michael, Prince, and David and Bowie, they all died the same year.
Oh, shoot. I should have went first, because it's going to be hard to top the three of you guys. I mean, I feel like my story is a little boring. What really made my love for films.
This is your show. You're the host. It's your show.
I'm going to have to make something up just to feel like I'm being competitive. But no, for me, seriously, I spent a lot of time growing up with staying at my grandparents as my parents worked. And so and kind of really getting back to what James was talking about is those early memories. I remember watching a lot of the black and white films that my grandparents watched. And over the years, whether it was sitcom or movies, that was something that they grew up, so they would watch that a lot. And then over the years, at the beginning, I don't think I really appreciated it. I'm like, don't you guys know that there's color out there? It doesn't have to all be black and white. But as I grew and I got to understand and see more of the actors and actresses in these films and playing different roles, I really appreciate that a lot more. And I can really appreciate my grandparents, I won't say making me, but really tuning me into something that I wouldn't have done on my own. And so I'm really thankful for that. So.
Well, Doug, it's funny because when I grew up in the 70s, there wasn't much of anything. So everything was the 40s and 50s on TV and, late night. So wherever they watched, I started watching it too. And I thought black and white was cool. I thought this is something different.
Well, and here's the other thing is the reason I really wanted to start this podcast was that a lot of people don't realize that if we don't study the past, a lot of the future is being recreated from the past. Like A Star Is Born, a lot of the younger generation only remembers Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. They don't realize it's been made 50 times. With
only 4, not 50.
I know. But my point is, with Judy Garland,
it feels like 50 times.
Right? Yes. But it's not original. It's not something that this generation, that a 16, 18-year-old would look at. Or You've Got Mail with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan was actually The Shop Around the Corner with Jimmy Stewart, Frank Morgan, etc. And that's really where that history is. And for me, that's the beauty, is really being able to study the past to realize what we have today and what some of those early pioneers went through to really bring us the joy that we have today.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And of course, part of the problem for today's generation is that in a way I'm going to generalize here across the 4 of us when I say we.
Sure.
We grew up in generations that we had less choice of our entertainment. We had handfuls of TV stations, and there was no home video, or at least, for me, not until, sort of 20 plus years into my life. And so, when something cropped up on TV, for example, or came around our local cinemas as part of a rerun double bill or whatever, it was much easier for us to kind of to absorb older material and to be able to kind of have, even if we did it in a sort of jigsaw way where we were gradually plucking pieces together and putting them up. Oh, right, that was made in the 1950s. And films felt like that in the 1950s. But gradually we were able to kind of piece all this together into some kind of world view of movies and entertainment and TV. Nowadays, it's both a blessing and a curse, because today's generation can watch anything they want at the press of a button. Are we allowed to swear on this show? I can't remember. You can bleep it out.
I always say, because I'm the network head, if a word is slipped out in conversation, it's okay.
I'll temper my language, but on a bloody telephone, you can watch a movie now or a TV series, and which is fantastic, the choice. But there's so much white noise now for younger generations to be able. So, Doug, when you do a show like this, if that it gets out there in the ether, and it's there for not just people of our generation to find, but younger generations as well. I love the idea that some 15-year-old kid, will be searching through sort of Spotify or iTunes or whatever, and come across your podcast and go, oh, Forgotten Hollywood. Maybe that's about Rob Schneider.
Right.
Sorry, Rob.
Don't say the Rob.
And then suddenly discover a world of, Veronica Lake and Margaret Rutherford, and whoever else. So I think shows like this are super important, that they get out there and they are there for younger people to find, as well as for old dinosaurs like us.
Old guys.
Well, I think this is a good way to transition to our next question then is, who are some stars that you think are forgotten, if you will, that need to be remembered or brought back to the public spotlight?
Okay. Shall I head off?
Yeah, you head off.
I'll head us off.
Go for it.
And JJ, I think you missed this at the beginning, but the one person in particular I'm going to talk about is not from Hollywood, actually, though he is in movies. And I've got notes off on the side here to make sure I get the correct pronunciations here.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about a guy who was born in Spain, who goes by the name of Jacinto Moliner. That's the name he was born with. But his screen name, he went by the screen name of Paul Naschy. And this guy is he's a bit of a personal hero of mine, because he at a very young age he became fascinated with horror films, particularly the Universal horror films. So you can begin to see why this might resonate with me. And he saw, as a child, he saw a screening of Universal's, I think it was 1943 film, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, which is a film I love too. And he became absolutely enraptured with this film, fascinated by it, and really loved the character of the Wolfman in it, which obviously was played by Lon Chaney Jr. And so Moliner went on in his life. He began his career. He tried various different things as careers as like a graphic designer and an artist, and also found himself in professional bodybuilding. And after while he was doing the bodybuilding, I think it was, who made the movie King of Kings in 1961? Who was the director? Wasn't King Vidor, was it? No. Yeah. Anyway, the big biblical epic King of Kings was filming in Spain. And Moliner became, he had a bit part in the film. Fairly substantial bit part. I mean, he's very noticeable in the movie. And that's kind of,
the director is Nicholas Ray.
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Narrated by Orson Welles. The movie was narrated.
There we go. Yep. Right. So we're in real Hollywood royalty here now. And so he was very noticeable in the film. He has a very distinctive build because he has this. He's very kind of box-chested guy. He's like kind of got this great chest because he was a professional bodybuilder. And he got the movie bug and got the filmmaking bug. And I think eventually he ended up in Hollywood and starred in an episode of I Spy, which also starred Boris Karloff. So the horror theme continues. And then eventually his passion for horror movies led him to pitch a movie that would become Spain's first horror movie shot in both 70 millimeter, which is incredible, and in 3D. And it was called La Marca del Hombre Lobo, the mark of the Wolfman.
Wolf, yeah.
And so he adopted the name Paul Naschy, because he felt his real name didn't have marquee value, or at least not outside of Spain. And so Paul Naschy became a major horror star in Spain and made tons of movies. And in fact, I'm going to read the list of this because he's the only actor to have played the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, Fu Manchu, the Mummy, and the Hunchback of Notre Dame in various movies. And in fact, the Wolfman character, which is his sort of signature character, actually he played the same character across a series of, I think it was 11 or 12 movies, right up into the 1980s. And so a sort of a star in Spain and very beloved by genre movie fans around the world. Excuse me. And in fact, in 2001, he was presented with the the gold medal award for fine arts in Spain by none other than King Juan Carlos himself. So he's pretty well known in Spain, and as I say, genre movie fans such as myself really love him passionately. But to the wider public, I mean, he's unknown. You know, it would be like Boris Karloff not being known in, you know, outside of say America or whatever. And so for me, that's I've come on this show tonight with the prime goal of bringing out Paul Naschy to the wider world. I know it's a little outside of the kind of Hollywood.
We might have to do an episode on him, Dave.
Yeah.
You know, that's absolutely. Because and that's one thing that I really enjoy about this podcast is, JJ, I would never have known about your great uncle Orlando Martin had it not have been for you and Dave being on another episode talking about another actor or actress. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the person I want to talk about, really. When you talk about bringing people that have been forgotten in the industry, not just him, people like him, because people think it started with Idris Elba. It didn't. Further back, you know, and this even I feel really guilty because I remember in the 80s, in the early 80s. Oh, I mean, I was only like 12, 13 then. When he would bring pictures every Sunday, we had to go to lunch with him every Sunday, and he'd bring out all his pictures with President Reagan, and there was Audrey Hepburn. And I was so bored at the time. I thought, oh, why does he always bring out this Hollywood? You know, and so great uncle say yes. And when I was in Africa filming with Audrey Hepburn, and we were like, oh, yawn. And we didn't understand. It was only when I got older I said, oh my goodness, he was telling us important stories. And that guilt I felt since he passed in 1985. And that guilt I felt, it's like he had such wonderful stories to tell. He said, oh, me and Robert Mitchum, when we were in the jungle, like, what? Wow. You know, and at the time, as a 12-year-old, it means nothing to you. Like, you know, who's Robert Mitchum? And, you know, he said, oh, and Anthony Newley, he had a wonderful singing voice. And now I'm actually friends with his son, Sasha Alexander. Oh, yeah. Yes, he's one of my best friends, John Collins' son. And my client, actually, he's a client as well. And it's interesting now because he kind of said, can you imagine, my father and your great uncle were great friends. And now, isn't it wonderful that we have this family friendship? He's very close to my brother as well. So we've kind of connected. And also with Lionel Jeffries, I think Dave will know this, Lionel Jeffries' son, who's a drag artist called Miss Hope Springs. Okay. Yes.
Great. What a great name.
I know. He's wonderful. And he's also, we've connected with him. So, you know, it's just been wonderful that, you know, these people who have been forgotten, really forgotten, or not even aware, not even forgotten, nobody knew about them in the first. I thank you, Doug, because in Nigeria now, your podcast, my auntie Julie, who came on, she said, oh, went crazy about it. They've been so excited that even in America, they're talking about Orlando Martins. You don't know what you've done. Crazy. James, I want to thank you for your platform because it's really given a lot of people back home a lot of hope that, okay, maybe we can do something. Maybe the government is going to contribute to doing a documentary about it. So look, even in America, they're interested in talking about it. Come on,
it's kind of crazy to me that they haven't so far. You know,
but it's, you know, that it's just they're not focused. You know, there's hunger. People are hungry. You know, so they don't have time to think about leisurely things like we do. We're very lucky, you know. So it's something we want to like gravitate towards. So I just want to thank you guys for, you know, having us in the first place.
Well, thanks. You can thank James because there's a funny story that we always talk about, James and I, and this almost didn't get off the ground because, well, James, and you can stop me if I'm telling the story wrong, but he wasn't crazy about my logo. He really wasn't crazy about the concept of would there be a hunger or a need for this type of platform talking about forgotten stars. And Thank you, James, for going.
Thank you.
What the hell? I'll give this nobody a shot. And here we are a year later, still talking, and in the process, bringing a few individuals that maybe truly have been forgotten back to life and putting a little breath of into their lives. So really, it's all James, and he could easily kill this, but he took a chance. So thank you, James.
Well, no, but thank you, Bo. I mean, this is something that's great to hear. You guys it's making people happy, because that's what my network's about. I'm trying to create a world that I want to see, and what I want to see is just people being recognized and stories being told that are not being told normally. There's 100,000 choices out there for entertainment. There really is.
Yeah.
There's a choice out there. You know,
Yeah.
we talk about TMC, TCM, and all them. It's like, yeah, there's a million things about movies and stuff, but like this show in particular, I found as I'm been doing, and this is a testament to Doug. It's like he's really digging in and spotlighting people. I'm like, who's that? I had no idea. And then you see this great story that every person has a story, right? Everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
You know, but it's like, and that's the thing. It's like now we're learning so many stories, and I'm telling you, people are telling me how much they enjoy this show. This show is one of my top 5 shows of all time. It's like, it's completely, I have 45 shows. It's like one of my top 5 shows every week.
Fantastic.
Been number 1 several times. And
here's to you and Doug, I say.
Doug, awesome.
Well done, guys.
Doug's doing the work. I mean, and you guys are I'm just going, thank you very much. But like with JJ, your episode especially too, is kind of like, I didn't know that. I mean, it made me more interested. And I'll tell you something. After your episode, this is ironic. After your episode, I got a phone call from a person. Turns out my great-grandfather was a wrestler, a black wrestler, wrestler that was wiped out of the books, of the history books. And he found this.
Wow. Oh my
God.
And he wrote a 25-page story on him.
Oh wow.
I was trying to find relatives, but they heard your episode, found out saw my name was attached, and found me.
Oh my God.
Oh wow. So cool. That is so cool.
I'm going to tell my brother. Wow.
So his name was Reginald Siki, and he was this back from the 1800s to like 1930s. He was this wrestler in Europe, came back to America. He was one of the first, and so they wiped him out of all the history books of the wrestling stuff, and now he's getting his due. And so this show literally brought my great-grandfather and my family, like you said, when you JJ brought our family some kind of hope and
exactly.
So this is, and we have another show that's not similar to this, but it's called Somewhat Classic. Then we have a third show that we're actually going to premiere coming soon too. All because of Doug. All because of that stupid logo. I didn't like that logo. I was like, I don't know, it's too sciencey, it's too whatever. But now I call it the Hess effect. He can do whatever he wants. Whatever he wants. Doug can do whatever he wants. JLJ Media is happy.
James, Doug, now is the time to ask for a raise, man.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. I'm like, Doug can do whatever he wants. I was like, he can do a half hour of dead air. I don't care.
As long as it sells, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. This is great. This is what I want. I want the ripple effect to happen where it's podcasts can change the world. Podcasts can
even on a micro personal basis. That's absolutely, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you noticed that they wrote a little, sorry to interrupt, but they wrote a little write-up in the newspaper in Nigeria because they were so excited. The person that did the article had heard the podcast, said, "Oh, can I do a little write-up about this?" And that was why but they didn't really say much. They didn't even say anything much, but they said, "We just want to mention that there was a podcast in America and they put you guys on it." And you guys are known in Africa now. It's wonderful.
I love it. I love it. And that's the thing about the world. The world really is small when you think about it now.
Right.
Because of technology. So about a podcast, and I sent them that we have these around the world charts. I sent it to them, and Hollywood's big in other countries. I mean,
yeah. Well, but I'll also say that the success, obviously, thanking James for taking a chance, my idea, but really it's individuals like you, the guests that come on, that really make this show, in my opinion, stand out that takes it to that next level. Yes, I can do some research, but when you were on with Orlando Martin or with Rutherford, there was additional stories, there was in-depth, and there was a passion there that you could just feel. And when I have different authors on that's talking about a relative or just somebody that they've done research, you can really feel that passion about whoever we're talking about. And I think that really takes it to the next level. So I'm really lucky and blessed in that aspect that really a lot of my guests do a lot of the heavy lifting because you can just feel that passion coming out.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
I agree.
Literally, we're nothing without you guys. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're
absolutely.
Basically, yay us.
Yes. and you know what's great talking with Dave and JJ, it seems like every time we talk, I get an idea for a new individual that I'm going to be talking to.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you, Dave, for this one.
Exactly.
We'll just keep it going.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people out there who are just unspoken of. They're not.
Right. Absolutely.
There's I always say there's no small parts and no small actors.
Right.
It really isn't. There's a story. Everybody has a story about how they got to this business and what their journey in the business was. It's all, that's why this show is so good, because people are like, I never knew that, or I didn't know that either, or I like that person too. And I thought he just did one movie, and you're telling us they did like 100 movies. You're like, I had no idea. They're just, I mean, it's like everyone has a story when they get into this business. I have a story now. You have a story, Doug. You say your story, but you said your story's not boring. You have a story. I mean, you're somebody who contacted me in Los Angeles on a Craigslist ad, and then we've gone from there. I mean, so everybody has a story. I mean, it's all interesting. It's all interesting.
Sometimes it's just meant to be.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I know we're getting close to our hour to wrap it up, but I wanted to ask everybody, what is a film that you think is forgotten that is a must-see, that maybe is one of your personal favorites, or maybe it's just a film that is not necessarily your top favorite, but you're like, you have to see this because it's out of the spotlight of the viewers? What would you say?
JJ?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm going to start with a really quirky one. And I remember the title. It's really quirky. I remember the title, and there was one that's kids we used to watch over and over again. And it was called, and you guys probably know more about it than I do, because I can't even remember. It wasn't a famous actor. It was called They Came to Rob Las Vegas. Have you ever It's a film. Look it up now. Yeah, it's
look right now.
I'm gonna do.
Yeah, please. They Came to Rob Las Vegas. The music, the mood. It was a very kind of out there movie. They Came to Rob Las Vegas. Can you see it?
What period was it, JJ?
1968.
Yeah. Jack Palance is in it.
Who's in it?
Jack Palance.
Yes, yes. It was a really kind of it was very stylistic. The music, it's a very sort of like, people don't know about it. You guys didn't know about it.
No.
But when you watch
look at that cast.
The
cast is incredible.
And the only reason being, it was one of my dad's favorite films, and he used to always put it on. This was like in the late 70s. We got it on video in those days. Those massive videotapes that we had.
Right.
Yeah, and Daddy used to play all the time. I was like, yes, want to watch They Came to Rob Las Vegas, and it wasn't like. It was just a film that the mood, it just captured the 60s. It captured America for me. It captured Las Vegas for me. Because one of the first places I went to as an adult, with my daughter, was Las Vegas. So it was always something. And the music, you've got to find that film and listen to the music.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Drive you crazy. You can rush out. Especially Dave, who loves LPs and all. You're going to go out.
Yeah, I think...
that's my recommendation. They Came to Rob Las Vegas.
My girlfriend Martha might not thank you for this. It's probably a film that I'll end up wanting the score for. Oh my God, I found the vinyl and it's like $150. It's so rare.
You probably will be. So that's my recommendation. That's my one film. I know it's out there, but I would look it up.
That's
excellent.
That's great. I haven't even. I'm shocked that I've not heard of that with that amazing cast.
Absolutely.
Just incredible.
It's cool, it's sexy, it's 1968. There's just something about it. And even sometimes I think elements of Mad Men, and because I love Mad Men, and I found elements of Mad Men about it.
Yeah.
So it really picks up on all that. And I love that era. For me, I love the 60s, even though I was just born at the end.
Me too.
And you know what? It's a Spanish co-production.
It is.
Which brings us back to Paul Nash.
There you go. There we go. Yes.
It's almost like we plan these things ourselves.
I know.
That's hilarious.
Okay, well, I am going to go for something of almost a decade later, from 1976. Okay. And it's a huge personal favorite film of mine, which I adore with a vengeance. And I first came across it. I went to see, I'm a big Doc Savage fan. I love the Doc Savage pulp novels. And I have almost all of in the 1960s, Bantam Books in the USA started to republish all of the Doc Savage pulp novels from the 1930s with these astonishing cover paintings often by a guy called James Barmer. And there were I think there was about 184 books in total, and I have all but about 9 of them.
Dang.
So it's quite a collection I have. And so in 1976, George Powell made a film of Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze, starring TV's Ron Ely, Tarzan, who played Tarzan on TV. It's not a well-loved movie because it really pushed it was low budget, very, very low budget, which is not great for a film set in the 1930s, made in 1976.
Right.
So the budget or lack of really shows through. But I love it with a vengeance. And I was a huge Doc Savage fan. And it came to my local cinema. And it was on a double bill. And it was with the film I'm actually going to talk about now on this double bill. And I was such a big fan of Doc Savage that I actually went to the screening 8 times in 1 week. That's how much of a geek I was. But of course, back in these days, you could just, I didn't go 8 times in the week. I would sit there and watch the same film for the whole, I would take a packed lunch, sandwiches and a flask, and just sit there in the cinema all day. And it was on a double bill with Richard Lester's Robin and Marion, which is it's Sean Connery. The cast is insane. Sean Connery, Nicole Williamson, Audrey Hepburn, Robert Shaw, and who else? I'm going to have to remind myself who else is in the film. Also, of course, Richard Harris. And it is, of course, it's a tale of Robin Hood. But it's a really fascinating one. It's very loosely based on one of the real stories of Robin Hood is in what happened to Robin when he returned from fighting the Crusades with King John. And this film is, it just has to be seen to be believed. It's a beautiful story about heroes and how the real heroes behind the myth, because Robin comes back to Sherwood Forest as an older man, and Connery plays to his age in it beautifully. He gets, like, when he's scaling castle walls, he gets a sore back from it and things like this. That age comes even to heroes, kind of thing. And he comes back to England to find that the Sheriff of Nottingham has taken control of Sherwood, and his merry men have gone, they've spread to the seven winds, and the bad guys have taken charge, and Maid Marian is nowhere to be found until he finds her, and she's now a nun in a nearby rectory. And of course, Marian is played by Audrey Hepburn. And it's a beautifully melancholic movie about a relationship that tries to rekindle itself. You know, a great one of like history's great love stories. Yeah. The next step, what happens when they re-find themselves, you know, many, many years later. And amongst all this kind of this great mythological, you know, these great mythological characters, Robin and Little John and the Sheriff of Nottingham, the performance and the dialogue, the performance particularly between Connery and Hepburn, when they try to find this relationship, it's a painfully truthful version of trying to rekindle this relationship. It's such a beautiful film with amazing music by John Barry. You know, obviously from the James Bond movies and many other great scores. And I just can't recommend the film enough. It's a very, very beautiful, bittersweet movie. And because Richard Lester directed it, I mean, Lester came from a very comedic background, starting with sort of The Goons and Spike Milligan, and of course made the classic two Beatles movies, Hard Day's Night and Help. So he has this great sense. I mean, Lester has an amazing sense of comic timing. And I always say that he's one of my comedic heroes, because he's very like who's the French comedy director whose name is Jacques Tati. They direct comedy in a very similar way, in that they will lock a camera down and let the comedy find itself within the frame. You know, there's a lot. I mean, obviously he knows how to edit and how to cut, but he finds a lot of comedy in lockdown shots, which is what Tati does. You know, he lets the comedy play out within the frame.
Well, this should be an episode. Again, this is an episode.
There you go, Doug. Richard Lester. You know, I mean, he went on to make a couple of the Christopher Reeve JJ. He went on to make a couple of the Christopher Reeve. Here's another connection, of course.
Another connection.
He went on to direct Superman 2 after the big falling out that Richard Donner had with the Salkinds, and made Superman 3 as well. He did the two Musketeers movies in the 1970s. And he's often called the father of the music video as well, because of his work with the Beatles. So yeah, Richard Lester is definitely an episode for you at some point. But that's my underrated movie, which I saw 8 times in a week because I wanted to see Doc Savage.
You know, this has been really great, because you know how much notes I've been taking during this. I probably got like 6 or 8 episodes.
I know, I love it.
You know? There's March, April, maybe even May. Who knows? You know, really, really quick. I'll tell you my two that I think are films that people need to watch. One is the Amazing Ambersons, which was Orson Welles' second film. I think that one is completely overlooked, and I'm probably going to get some people hating me for saying this. I think it's a better film than Citizen Kane.
Ooh,
I know those are fighting words, but I really believe The Amazing Ambersons is a wonderful film that is overlooked a lot. The second film that I will say is Young Mr. Lincoln with Henry Fonda from 1939.
Yes.
Now, I think Henry Fonda does a wonderful job and could have been an Academy Award a winner for that one. However, he was up against Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz, Stagecoach, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. 1939, it's just...
he didn't stand a chance. Yeah.
No, if he would have been in 1938 or 1940, that film... But it gets forgotten, if you will, because it was just a wonderful year.
Absolutely. And actually, just to backtrack onto Magnificent Ambersons, I mean, the story of that is a fascinating film because, of course, the studio took the cut away from Wells. You know, he famously fell out with the studio. And to this day, I don't think we've seen a representative director's cut of that. I'm not even sure it exists anymore.
Probably not.
Which of course, you know, I mean, that's a great story in that one. And of course, Wells would then spend a lot of the rest of his career, you know, fighting with studios for budgets and for cuts of his films, you know, exactly like Touch of Evil, which would be another film I would bring up as an underrated movie. There's another episode, Doug.
June, July.
Wait, how long are we here?
I know. Well, I just want to mention one film because actually I have other live shows to do today. Because I actually have shows to do today that are live. This is fascinating. I can talk for like 2 hours on this. I just mentioned one film from 1989, one of my favorites, called Scenes from a Class Struggle from Beverly Hills. It was directed by Paul Bartel, who did Eating Raoul. It has Jacqueline Bisset, who's my favorites in it. It has Ed Begley Jr. It has Rebecca Schaefer before she died. Was killed. Paul Mazursky. I mean, it's this whimsical, funny take about Beverly Hills that I love, and I just want to. And I think no one talks about it. But Eating Raoul, of course, was big. But then it's like this movie came out.
Yeah, it's a really forgotten. That's a definite forgotten movie that, as you say, nobody really talked about it. No. Great little film, I think. You know, I'm with you on that one. We can do an episode on that one.
I know, it's another one. I know, it's another one.
Anyway. Well, JJ, Dave, James, thank you all three for being here. And thank you for helping me celebrate 1 year in this crazy business, if you will. I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Forgotten Hollywood. Just search for Doug Hess or Forgotten Hollywood. You can also find me on Twitter or Instagram at HessDoug14. If you listen to this podcast on iTunes or another podcast service, please subscribe, rate, and review this episode. Tune in next week for the latest episode of Forgotten Hollywood. Thank you for listening, and we will see you then.